and welcome to the Galveston County Justice Administration Building, the Jury Assembly Room, where we are set to have our next Galveston County Daily News Forum featuring the candidates for District Clerk, which is a special election this November. I'm going to go over the format here quickly. Each of our candidates will have a 3-minute intro. They drew lots to decide who gets the intro first. Then we'll start asking questions. The person who drew the number 1, they got the intro first, will have the first question to answer first. Then we'll rotate between the two. Each gets to answer the same question. We'll rotate through until the end. Then the person who did not get to have an intro first will start with the closing statement, which will also be 3 minutes. The question and answer session lasts 90 seconds on each answer. We have our timekeepers, I should say, sitting up front. John Flowers and Angela Taylor, our community editor. And it'll work like this. When the candidate has 30 seconds left, she'll hold up the 30-second sign. The crowd should be able to see that as well. When there's 10 seconds left, the 10-second sign will go up. Then the dreaded 0. At which point I will let the candidate finish the sentence they are in, but we'll cut them off. I caution everyone in the crowd to hold any applause that you may have for your candidate until the end of their answer, because any time taken up with applause will eat into their 90-second time during that. We also ask that you be respectful and no boos from the crowd or no outside remarks. If so, I will make a comment to the crowd as well. Let me bring up the candidates then. The Democratic candidate for District Clerk, LaTanya Wilson. And the Republican candidate, Mr. John Kennard. And as a reminder, this forum is being streamed live at galvnews.com and will be available for replay all throughout the election. As I said, we did draw lots at the beginning, and Ms. Wilson drew the number 1, so she gets to have her intro. 3 minutes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'd like to first thank Galveston Daily News for allowing us to come before the community and tell our talents. I want to thank the community for coming out and having enough interest to find out who you're electing. My name is LaTanya Wilson. I have 25 years in the district clerk's office, and I jokingly say I've really been exposed to this my entire life. My mother was a clerk in the courtroom, and she worked in Harris County, and she was Galveston County's first family clerk. And so I've been exposed to this my entire life. I've worked every position in that office. I started at the very beginning in what's called intake. I mastered that, and I proceeded through every particular task and position in that office. Once I completed that, Evelyn Wells Robinson recognized that I had a special talent and a special knack for this particular office and these particular functions that we're governed to uphold. She then asked me to be her trainer. I then trained every position in that office. After I got through training for 9 years, she then asked me to become her chief deputy. I was hired by V.J. Benanati. I was made chief deputy by Evelyn Wells Robinson. I come from great lineage. They taught me a couple of things. That you're first. No matter what we do, don't let the bureaucracy get in the way of being a good public servant. Every day that I've come to work, I've never lost that. I've never forgot that. If you've ever heard me speak before, you know I say this every single time. I get, but for grace, it could be us needing those services. There's nothing that says when you leave here tonight that you won't be involved in a major accident and may have to litigate that case. There is nothing that says, nothing that you've done that when you go to bed tonight, someone won't climb through the window and perhaps do ill will to you, and a felony has arisen, and the services of the court will be needed. Here is what I promise to you. You will always have trained individuals. You will always have public servants at heart, as long as I'm the administrator of that office. Thank you very much.
I want to echo Latanya's thoughts. Thanks for hosting this for us. I'm John Kennard. I'm the Republican candidate for district clerk. Some of you may wonder what a district clerk does, and as Latanya said, there's some very important aspects of the district clerk's office. One of them is they have jurisdiction over the selection of potential jurors. Also, they issue all the process, one of those being arrest warrants, subpoenas, and all the other court papers that we have. They also collect, maintain, and distribute millions of dollars per year in trust funds, fees, and other miscellaneous fees. I think, like Latanya says, that most people don't realize the importance of the district clerk's office, but it is very important. And hopefully none of you will become part of it through a lawsuit, a divorce, child support, any of those issues. But if you are, you need somebody there that has the knowledge and training to handle the office. I think it's very important to have legal, financial, and also personnel management experience. I have a law degree, an accounting degree. I've been a member of the Texas State Bar since 1982, so 30 years of bar membership. I've spent 30 years in the justice system as a police officer, attorney, and FBI agent. So I have extensive experience throughout the country. I have a diversity of quality experience working with courts, not just the ones here in Galveston. Also, as far as management experience, in the FBI I spent 27 years. I was in charge of a $100 million budget back in Washington, D.C. for a National Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force program for the whole country. So I understand how it is to manage money. I know the importance and how to do that. Also, I was in charge of the local FBI office here in Galveston, which covered 5 other counties, 1.2 million people. So I know what it's like to work in big operations. I've been exposed through working for the FBI, the premier justice agency in this country. I've been exposed throughout the country. I've served throughout the country. I've seen justice systems throughout the country, and I've observed the good and the bad. And I want to implement the best practices when I become your district clerk here in Galveston County. I'm John Kennard. I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
All right. Latanya, you'll get to answer this question first. The transition in the district clerk's office after the last election was less than ideal. Should the difficulties experienced then be an issue in this race, and why or why not?
No, I don't think the issues that arose after the last transition will be an issue this time. Here's why. My staff reached out to Mr. Murray twice. We called him. When I lost the election last year, I came into my office and told my staff that we would start the transition period the first week of December. The last week of November, we made a phone call to Mr. Murray. Mr. Murray declined to meet with us. 2 weeks later, my management staff and I had a meeting, and we realized that there is no way he can come in. We had so many projects that were ready to roll over. He absolutely needed to meet with us. So we made another phone call, and he advised me, or advised my director of governmental affairs, that he would not be doing any transition with us, that he would do the transition with Bonnie Caroga. And so at that time, we let him do the transition with whomever he chose to do the transition with. Thank you.
Same question to you, John. 90 seconds.
I think, I've run for 2 races. I've won 1 and I've lost 1. And I think you have to be gracious either way. When you run for public office, you serve the people. And it's not about you. You've got to do the things that benefit the public. And I know with the transition, there was a lot of inconveniences to the new district clerk coming in, and also some cost to the taxpayers in that they had to spend extra money to correct some things that were done. So my position has always been be a gracious loser and a happy winner. But so I think the transition is something that was overcome. It's unfortunate, but the Republicans were able to succeed and take office and overcome that.
All right, next question, and John, you'll get to answer this first. 90 seconds, folks, please. What efficiencies are needed within the district clerk's office, and how would you implement them? 90 seconds.
One of the main things, as I mentioned earlier, the district clerk handles millions of dollars in funds. So I think that's got to be a primary focus of the district clerk. You take in a lot of cash, a lot of money for different things, a lot of accounts. When I was reviewing the district clerk, some of the records, I noticed that from 1998 to 2008, that there were $889,000 in funds that were derived from sale of properties that had tax liens on them. If a property has a tax lien, you sell it for more than the lien, that money goes to the district clerk. And they have to keep it for 2 years. And if the owner of the original property doesn't claim it, then that belongs to the people, the taxing entities that took that money in. Over a 10-year period, this $889,000 was not distributed to the taxing entities. And half of that money would have went to school districts. And so I think that's very important, and it's something you've got to keep an eye on and make sure that monies that need to be distributed are distributed appropriately. So once again, the financial aspects are very important to the office. I have an accounting degree, and I will definitely focus on those. Thank you.
Ryan, same question for you.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Let me say this. When I took office, the first thing I did was identify those funds. When I realized that my predecessors were not turning over those funds, we turned over those funds every 2 years. We turned over $2 billion back over to the taxing entities. Now, I'm done with that. Moving on to the next thing. The very first thing that needs to be done in this office is we have got to continue with technology. We had so many projects ready to roll, and when I say we had worked them up, they were completely processed. All the next administration had to do was implement them. We were prepared and ready under my leadership to restore and digitize all of the historical records. Galveston County, there is not if we're going to have another hurricane, it's just when. We had made arrangements to get 1920 historical records are 1836 to 1920, 1920 to 1985 we need to digitize, because as taxpayers that makes the records available to you, and we need to do that. But technology is the core component of what needs to be done. That's what I was doing when I left office. And back to the first question, there was no money needed to be used for the transition period. That is an absolute fallacy. Thank you.
Candidates, as I explained to you before, when we have something a little bit of a back and forth here, and since you've addressed that other issue, Latanya, let me go ahead and John give you a chance. She says what you said earlier was a lie.
Well, and I wasn't there, but I've heard from a number of people. I've talked to different people that work with them, and somebody took all the labels off the keys to the filing cabinets, so they couldn't open the filing cabinets for, I understand, a week. They had to go through and try the different filing cabinets, put the key in and see which one worked. There were other things that were done, like I say, I wasn't there, that it took employee time to go and rectify those items. So when you use employees to rectify something they shouldn't have to be doing, that costs money for the taxpayers.
Do I get to respond?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
you
great.
do.
Let me tell you something. The district clerk's office has a master key box. That is, when you walk into my office, it sits on the wall. That master key box is there. It's been there. It has all of the master list of those keys in that wall. The keys that my staff used every day that they needed to do their jobs was in the same place that it always is. The keys that he's referencing, the silliness about the keys, they were duplicate keys to a desk. There are about 700 of them. but they were duplicate keys to the individual staff desk. We didn't do a transition. If you had transitioned with me, I would have told you, hey, those are all duplicate keys to the staff desk. So yes, 700 little bitty keys look like a whole lot of keys, but no master keys were ever tampered with, were ever moved, and anyone who has ever worked in the district clerk's office knows where those master keys were. They were never moved, never changed, and the master keys that they need every day, same place. So that's absolute foolishness. Thank you.
All right. Thank you both. Latanya, you'll get a chance to answer this first. What parts of the district clerk's office budget would you increase and why?
What part of the, say that again, I'm sorry.
Of the office's budget would you increase and why? It could be for a specific program.
Well, I hadn't been there for 2 years, but I don't think we need to increase. I don't know what their current budget is, but there are opportunities to create new revenue streams based on the new case management system that I put in. And so while under my leadership, we incurred 30% increase in filings. You all remember that old BP explosion case? You remember the 20,000 cases that came out of nowhere and landed on my doorstep? I never once asked for any additional money. What I did is I knew that if I had trained staff, we looked at every single process. We set up some things that we could do a conglomerate of processes all at one time and really streamline them. We absolutely handled that 30% without an increase. You can't do that unless you understand the processes. There is no way to effectively handle that kind of influx if you don't know what you're doing. And I submit to you, I've been doing this 25 years. I don't need my staff to tell me how to do it. I set the goals, I set the standards, and we implement them. Thank you.
John, same question for you.
One of my primary objectives, and I think something we're way far behind on, is we do need to digitize and get our records online so you don't have to stand in line. And we've just started doing that in the last 2 years, that we've got 2 years worth of family records, and we're trying to put the records that come in now with e-filing. But one of the problems that and I've talked to a lot of people in the district clerk's office, is the system that was implemented, Odyssey, does not interface with Texas Online, which is an e-filing system, and doesn't allow us to directly digitize and put those records on because of the different file formats that we have. So the staff has developed a way to develop a patch and transfer those, but that's one of the things that I think we need to look at, because what I want to do is make it more convenient for the citizens of Galveston County. Once again, go online instead of standing in line. The same thing with, I want to look at e-juries to where you don't have to show up. You can register online and then you get called if you need to. Other counties have implemented that nearby, and I think that's a good process. So, but the main thing as far as money, because I think the budget is tight with everybody, will be to try to digitize and index these records and get them on the internet so they're available.
Alrighty. And since you both addressed this next question will allow you to expand a little bit more about online records. John, you'll get to answer this first, however. How would you expand the ability to obtain court records and filings by the public through online?
Well, as I was just talking, I mean, the main thing we have to overcome is the Odyssey system, which doesn't work well in trying to digitize and index these records. I know other counties, like Harris County, has 4 decades of records online. There's no reason we can't do the same thing. And I don't mind going to the other counties, seeing what systems they're using that work, because the current system we have doesn't work. It doesn't go with OIS, which is the sheriff system either. These systems are not working together. One of my primary objectives will be to get a cohesive set of computer systems so we can get all this information online. I mean, and that's important too, like dealing with the sheriff's office from a law enforcement perspective, but also getting the records online. So that will be one of my primary objectives, determine how we can get those on as quickly as possible, because we need to save people from coming down here to the courthouse if they can do the same thing on the internet.
All right. Latanya, same question for you.
Sure. He is correct about that e-filing, but you ever heard the saying, you don't know what you don't know? One of the reasons I did not pull in e-filing, and I knew that we had to bring in this new case management system, we had to get everything stabilized in that environment. The e-filing with all of the legal requirements had been done. All Jason Murray had to do was flip the switch, but the reason I didn't flip the switch before I left is because the records went online July of 2010. I lost the election in November. And so the system was still in its stabilization mode. There was it wasn't prudent for me to put e-filing in. One of the things that I was having Odyssey do along with e-filing is I was insisting that they speak with one another and develop a bridge so that that information could go directly into the system. What they do now is they may have made a patch, but it doesn't work. And it is not an effective way to manage that e-filing system. They should have waited. They should have had those two companies develop an interface and then implement e-filing. It is costing you money, and they paid for that extra patch when the cost should have been with the two providers.
Time.
Thank you.
Well, let me use the moderator's prerogative here, since both of you seem to be versed on this a little bit. Is that LaTanya, let me have you answer this first. Who's the they? Whose responsibility is this? The district clerk's office, county commissioners?
Well, I'm glad you came back and asked. There's a statewide organization of clerks and courts all throughout the state. I was one of the founding members. We set the criteria for Odyssey, and we came at it as a collective group so that we could save you money. When you hear about a case management system, it's about $25 million per county. But because about 18 counties came together and we were able to set a standardized criteria so that they could in fact apply for all of us, then we cut your cost probably by about $18 million. So Odyssey won that contract. And the people Texas Online is the e-filing company. Those two, because they have proprietary systems, they do not want each other to know how to interface with the other. And so Odyssey wants to create their own, so that because they're the big dog in in all of the state now, who most of the counties have brought this system through, if they develop their own, that is an abundance of money for them. So they have no interest in combining services with Texas Online. But I was requiring everyone to come to the table, because I am one of the founding members, and requiring them to talk so that this could be done.
Time.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I think LaTanya, she makes a very good point in explaining this. There's Texas Online, which does all the e-filing, and it's a good system in that the attorneys have to pay to file on there, and the county gets paid no matter what, if their credit card's bad or whatever else. The bad thing is the two are not compatible. We made a bad decision to get an Odyssey initially. I'm not casting aspersions at LaTanya, because at the time it probably sounded like a good idea. But in my way of thinking, it was not the right decision. It's not compatible with digitizing our records. You can't use it on the Texas Online, which is all the e-filing that's occurring now. So we need to really evaluate that. Like I said, not casting aspersions, because I don't know the basis of the decision at the all, but I think we need to move in the direction of getting something that's compatible, so we don't have to recreate, we don't have to patch, we can go from the beginning. Thank you.
All right. Next question up. And LaTanya, you get a chance to answer this first.
Sure.
One of you has extensive experience in the district clerk's office. The other was running for sheriff until 2 months ago and has no direct experience in the clerk's office. Should direct experience within the district clerk's office be an issue in this race, and why or why not?
I absolutely think it is. I think that this job, the district clerk's office, is the heartbeat of the judicial system. And it's not a contingency prize. If you run and lose and then decide, well, he only lost by 200, so we should give him this other job. I think that is for all the people who work in the district clerk's office and provide you services, for all of the district clerks that came before me, such a slap in our face. We work really hard. What we have and what we develop is a craft. It takes years to perfect. I went through an apprenticeship. I came in at 5 o'clock in the morning because I had such a desire to learn this office at an expert level. I am recognized all across the state as someone who knows what they're doing in the district clerk's office. I am not confined to Galveston County. I wrote the state standards for emergency response for all of the clerks in the state after our loss. The Office of Court Administration came to me. So I'm not someone who just showed up, lost another race, and intend on running for sheriff. I'm not running for sheriff because I'm not qualified. And I don't think that this race should be handled like that. Thank you.
John, same question for you, 90 seconds.
Well, there's several different issues that she's brought up. Let's address the one on experience, how important that is in district clerk's office. I think that can be bad, because when you have isolated experience, when you spent your whole life doing one thing, and you've not been exposed to other ways, other techniques of doing things, you never learn. And you're hoping that the way you learned was the correct way, because you don't have the exposure that I have. I've served throughout the country, and like I said, I've been in the justice system working with courts for the last 30 years as a police officer, attorney, and also as an FBI agent. Had a chance to observe throughout the country how things are done, how they're done right, and how they're done wrong. And I want to do them right. I mean, perhaps this is the best district clerk's office in the country, and you don't need to learn from the outside, but I doubt it. I mean, there's always things you need to learn. As far as the sheriff's race, and she brings that up, and after the sheriff's race, you know, I was approached, and I'm glad she brought this up, to to run. The difference between the two parties is the Republican process was competitive in all the primaries, and in the selection of the nominee, there were 3 other people to where we had interviews. We went before the 51 different precinct chairs, and the Democratic Party, it's raise your hand. And so I think that process has improved the selection in that I had to compete with 3 other people, 3 other qualified people for that.
Time. All right, John, next question you will get to answer first. What can be done to expand in-person services from the clerk's office in the north part of Galveston County? Are there enough resources for the office at the Calder Road Annex? If not, what would you do to provide those?
I'm going to take a hard look at that, because we have 1 employee that works up there now. So obviously if she takes off sick or any other days we don't have anybody there, she takes off lunch, they have to close. There's a continuing population growth in the North County. Judge Mark Henry recognized that and opened up an office up there. So I'm going to take a real hard look at adding 1 more person up there. We have a lot of cases filed by Harris County attorneys, and they cross the border to file their cases if they don't do e-file in Lake City. So I think it's an important office, and it's definitely deserving of a hard look at additional staffing for that office.
All right, Latanya?
When I left office, it was a sufficient amount of coverage. That office does not get the traffic that the main office gets, and because of e-filing, and now that they've brought that on, it should even receive less traffic. But if when I get back in office, I notice that the traffic is heavy, then we will adjust. That's what we do. And for the record, when that young lady is sick, we have trained staff. That's the cornerstone of what I do. I have multiple people trained at multiple positions so that we are never at a situation where only 1 person knows that job. And so all we do is transfer our resources to Lake City to cover that area if the need arises. Thank you.
All right. Tanya, you get to answer this question first.
Sure.
What specific policies would you implement to increase the public's right to access to records, but protect privacy of that information which cannot be released? That includes any specific training. 90 seconds.
E-filing is a wonderful thing, but it does expose individuals to easy access to your information. I am very cognizant of that. One of the things that I wanted to do is make people sign in so that we could, it doesn't cost you anything necessarily to the public, but that is another potential revenue stream that I want to look at for attorneys with respect to documents. I am very sensitive to that, because if by chance some confidential information gets on there, or just everyday things that are contained in pleadings are not always deemed confidential, but highly personal if you ever had the opportunity to read them. And so I think that we should know who's looking at those records at all times. And so I already had, before we started, I wanted to get those records and have individuals sign up like Harris County, just so that we know who you are and watch and monitor who's accessing the system. Thank you.
John, same question to you, 90 seconds.
Well, I spent the last 27 years with the FBI, and primary focus is keeping things confidential. So I know how to keep confidential things confidential, but on the other side, like I said earlier, if it's public, I want to get it out to people online. So I know the procedures, and that goes to my extensive training in handling documents, in creating them, maintaining them, and making them secure. So I would implement the procedures that I've learned through my years in the FBI to make sure that the information that is sensitive, and some of it is very sensitive, family matters, other matters that are dictated by the legislature that should not be revealed to anybody, I will ensure their security.
All right, sir. Thank you. This next question, John, you'll be able to answer first. Will you have other business interests or secondary jobs if elected as the next district clerk? If yes, explain how you will not let that interfere with your duties if elected.
No, being district clerk will be a full-time job for me. I'm admitted to the bar, but I will not practice law. And so I will devote my full time to making the district clerk's office the best I can possibly do.
All right, LaTanya?
I currently own Gulf Coast Public Affairs, and when I win the election, I've already spoke with someone to assume my day-to-day role in that company. And so I will continue to be what I've always been, is a dedicated public servant as your district clerk. Thank you.
And I think it deserves some clarification. You would still own the company, not run it. Is that?
That is correct. I would hire someone to run the day-to-day operations.
Just to make sure. All right. The main reason we are here today, quite frankly, is that this office has been rocked by scandal this year. I just wanted to give you an opportunity here, folks, in 90 seconds to talk about what you've seen by the staff. And LaTanya will get this first. Of their reaction to that, how they've handled things during this time period.
As I always state, training is the cornerstone of what I believe that office should stand on, and great public service. Because I focused on training, because I left that staff so well trained, so well prepared, they were able to step in the midst of foolishness. I am so proud of them. You know, my chief deputy stepped up, stepped in. Mr. Murray's chief deputy, in the midst of trouble, stepped out. He left, abandoned the ship. Understand that when I interview, it starts with me from the interview process. I'm looking for a certain kind of person, a certain caliber of character. And you can train people to do anything, but their heart, they come to you like that. So it starts with me in the interview process, and I think that my staff just did a yeoman's job, and I'm very, very proud of them. Thank you.
John, same question, 90 seconds.
Well, I'm not in the district clerk's office, but I don't know if I would call them LaTanya's staff, because it was a big turnover. But I think I spent my time, since I was named the Republican nominee, talking to the judges, all the people that work with the courts, to find out how the district clerk's office is doing. In fact, I got a jury summons for the day after the election. I had to go down there before I ran for district clerk, and I was treated very good. Everybody gives them the highest marks. They're doing an excellent job. I think Glenn, who's the named district clerk's doing a good job. But Wes McCoy, who's the #2 deputy district clerk, is doing a fantastic job. He brings experience from Houston, where he served over 30 years and was the chief deputy there, I believe, for like a decade. So the bottom line is I'm very proud of all of the, turn out the lights,
Please be careful if you're leaning against the wall in the back of the room. Sorry about that, John. We'll add 15 seconds there.
Thank you. No, but I'm very proud of every employee there. I've had a chance to go and meet with them, and under the circumstances, they're extremely difficult. I can't imagine how tough their job is, as far as, you changing bosses and the transition and all the turmoil that exists. So once again, I think they're doing a good job, and I look forward to working with them when I become district clerk. Thank you.
All right. It may have been fortuitous that the lights were dimming on us now. So now we have finished up our questions. It's time now for closing statements. As we had said at the beginning, John, you'll get 3 minutes, followed by LaTanya to close this up.
Thank you. As I said, I'm the Republican candidate for district clerk. I think it's important to look at the qualification of each candidate. I have a law degree, an accounting degree, but I've spent 27 years, or actually almost 3 decades, working in the justice system throughout the country. 8 of those years was locally, where I worked with the local courts, the federal courts. I've had a chance to observe, to learn. As I said earlier, that's the problem with working one place your whole life, is you don't really learn, because you learn what has been done for 100 years, 30 years, whatever. So I think my diversity of quality experience will be valuable. I think I can make great changes to the office. The number one thing I want to do is to put the public documents online so you don't have to come to the courthouse. I want to expand the e-filing. That's where the attorneys e-file the documents. So if you have a lawsuit, it gets resolved quicker because the documents are being e-filed. I want to make sure one of the things they do is issue process. And one of the processes is a felony arrest warrants. I want to make sure they're issued promptly, because the last thing we want is somebody out to commit another crime because the warrant was not placed in there quickly enough. Financial aspects. We've got to take a look at the financial, because that's the critical area. We're dealing with millions of dollars of money here. We have to control and track, properly allocate, properly distribute. I want to make sure that that's done. I don't think people realize the importance of the district clerk's office, but if you're involved, you definitely want somebody there that knows what they're doing, that has the experience, that's able to implement what they've learned working in the justice system for 30 years as far as personnel management. I've had, for me, this would be maybe the 20th new assignment that I've had, the Bureau Major assignment. I'm able to transition between assignments and accomplish my goals. That's why I continue to get promoted within the FBI, which I say is a premier agency within the justice system. I've been validated by them. I've learned. Additionally, I've had the chance on the campaign trail to meet all of the people within the county government running and also serving. And that will be valuable. From the first day, I have established relationships that I've done on the campaign trail. As far as me running, some people, I think I've heard the allegation that I'm desperate or whatever. I have a federal pension. My wife, Chris, of 30 years, works. That's not the case. And I can go out and practice law and make money. But I've been a public servant my whole life. If this opportunity came up, and I want to continue to be a public servant, I want to be your district clerk of Galveston County. Thank you.
All right. And LaTanya, you get to close us out tonight. 3 minutes.
For those of you who know that's tough. Again, I want to thank you for your time, allowing us to come to you tonight and tell you what we believe we can do for the office. I think John is correct in that when you're a public servant, you do have such a desire. It's something that you grow to love. And I have a passion for the district clerk's office. Mr. Kennard wouldn't have you believe the only thing I've ever done was work in the district clerk's office. Mr. Kennard, I want to tell you, I did a little law enforcement. I was an undercover investigator for 10 years. I arrested people. I did it for Foley's corporate stores. and I did internal and external theft. I own my own company. For those of you who've had an opportunity to visit League City lately, and you had an opportunity to go to Boogie Blues and Brews, that was my company that produced that. If you had an opportunity to go to League City's 50th anniversary, the birthday party, that was my company that did that. Because anything that I do, I give it 110%. My clients that hire me to do business development are very pleased with my services. So I'm not one isolated person who can only do district clerk work. I come back to you because I love to serve you. I truly believe that at the end of my day, at the end of my story, and I promise you, this is how I come to work, that someone will tell me one day, if I do my job well, help you when you're in the valleys of your life, teach people to respect and handle you like they would want to be handled if they were in the crossroads of their life, that someone will tell me, well done, my good and faithful servant. Yes. And so for me, it's bigger than being a Democrat, being a Republican, being any Tea Party, independent, green, red, purple. When you come to me, you will get trained people who care. They won't care what you belong to. They won't care who you are, but they will want to help you, because that's the kind of environment that I create. That's the kind of environment I came from. That's the kind of environment I will continue. And I thank you for your vote today. I hope that you realize that my passion is real, and I thank you in advance for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you to both candidates for this. This was actually a last-minute addition, and both of these folks were troopers to make sure they came on out here and joined us for this evening. And I know Bill Sargent, our elections coordinator, would find me remiss for not pointing out early voting starts on Monday, runs from 8 until 5 on Monday through the 26th of October, 7 to 7 on October 27th, 1 to 6 on October 28th, and then from October 29th to November 2nd, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And of course, Election Day will happen on November 6th. Thank you all, and get home safely.